Hello and welcome to Take 3 with PT. This is a YouTube series where I take 3 minutes to answer a biblical, practical, or theological question. Today's question is anxiety a sin? And it's an important question because we live in an anxious age. A study that came out in October 2020 said that people in 2020 were 70% more anxious than in previous years, and the factors were numerous. You have a global pandemic, you have death rates that are in front of you, you have economic instability, political division, racial divide, and the list goes on and on. I don't want to say them all because it'll make me anxious. I'll give you 3 verses in Scripture that address anxiety in the negative. One is the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says, don't worry about your lives. So obviously worrying is a sin. We have Philippians chapter 4 where the Apostle Paul says, be anxious for nothing. So obviously anxiety is a sin. And then we have Jesus talking with Martha and Mary in Luke chapter 10. And he says, Mary, you're anxious about many things. Or Martha, you're anxious about many things. But Mary, sitting quietly, peacefully, listening to my words, she's chosen the right thing. So obviously anxiety is a sin. Well, actually, let's pause for a minute. Anxiety means you have a deep care about something. That's what the word anxious means, to care deeply about something. But there's also a mental health issue called anxiety, which understands that the brain, this is a brain, has a downstairs part and an upstairs part, and then all of these grooves in it. The downstairs part of our brain, when we are threatened, takes over. We might freeze, we might flee, we might fight, we might faint. These are the things that happen when the downstairs brain, the amygdala, that emotional center takes over. And it can wash our brains in a chemical reaction that causes these anxious responses. And we can't always control what our brain does in the moment of panic or danger or fear. And our life is filled with triggers that may cause this chemical reaction. If your brain is having a chemical reaction, that's not a sin. That's just what happens to a brain, maybe a fallen brain or maybe a brain trying to protect a body. Second, there is ingrained behavior. So our brains have these grooves. And when you feel danger, if you take it to the worst case scenario every time, if you feel completely isolated and alone every time, if you start, cutting yourself or retreating or going online to read every possible ailment that you might have, those ingrained behaviors can lead you down a path of anxiety. And so we feed into these ingrained behaviors, but some of them are learned from our childhood. And some of them we're doing without even thinking about it. So that kind of anxious ingrained behavior, we are responsible to pay attention to it and replace it with others. But once those get ingrained, it's really hard to undo it. So just be aware of that. Now, here's what we do know, that there can be an unhealthy fixation that we have with things, worst case scenarios, or just this ache, this pain. And Jesus would say, in that moment, try to pause, take a breath, and remember God cares for you. God cares for you, and He'll take care of you. And it's easier said than done, but if we can change our fixation from our fear to our God who is faithful, then that helps us fight anxiety.